Dr. Amalinda Savarani from the prestigious University of Gadjah Mada in Indonesia, generally considered one of the top 2 universities, maybe the top university, depending on how you look at it. Certainly now the largest, we have discovered. So we're very pleased that she could join us today. Just to give you a little bit of background on her, she received her doctorate from the Amsterdam Institute of Social Research, writing a dissertation about business and politics in a provincial town in Indonesia. Her research interests include social movements, which we'll be talking about today, civil society, social movements in the urban sector and labor in particular, using a political economy approach. She was the former chair. I guess she's also happy that was a past role, very time-intensive role, past chair of the Department of Politics and Government at Gadjah Mada, a very well-known institute for those of you familiar with Indonesian universities, but is now currently head of the PolGov Research Center in the same department. Her most recent book is entitled Civil Society Elites in Cambodia and Indonesia, Nies Press 2023, just this year, co-edited with Astrid Nora Nielsen and Professor Anders Ulin. Her other recent academic publications have been in journals such as the Current Southeast Asian Affairs, one on urban politics and electoral politics, and she's also worked with a Swedish scholar, Professor Ola Turnquist, editing a book on the results of a democracy survey entitled Reclaiming the State, Overcoming Problems of Democracy in Indonesia. So without further ado, I'd like to yield the floor to Linda, and we very much look forward to your talk.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you everyone for coming. I have cited lots of works published by Southeast Asia Research Center, City of Hong Kong, City of University of Hong Kong. So it's really quite surreal to be here with you all. Also those who are joining online, thank you for joining us today. First of all, of course, I would like to thank Professor Yogo Fosati and Professor Mark Thompson for inviting me today. So I'm going to talk about civil society in Indonesia 25 years after Reformasi. It's a long timeline, but please bear with me in the next 45 minutes. I hope I will not bore you. And I'm sure a lot of you coming from different countries in the region, Southeast Asia, and it will be very nice to compare similarities or differences among the countries. So, how do I do this? Works before, right?
Yeah.
Oh. I need your help, Kevin. Okay. Yeah. So my talk about civil society in Indonesia will be in the 2 main contexts. I will not separate it, talking about it in itself in isolations, but I'm going to discuss this within the 3 things. Number 1 is Indonesia scholars already label it as having a regression, backsliding, illiberal, basically lowering quality of democracy. That's number 1. Number 2 is I want to discuss this in the context of economic, like why this is happening over the past 1 decade, particularly during Joko Widodo presidency. And last but not least, I will also to delve into the world of civil society itself in Indonesia by showing, as a matter of fact, even though the roles is deteriorating, but internally, civil society organization in Indonesia having stronger capacity because of thanks to the 25 years after Reformasi, many international donors getting in, many international donors support civil society agenda, and at the same time increase the internal capacity. So that's the 3 things I'm going to talk about in the next 45 minutes. And And I will, explore one by one. Next, please. So before I get into a detail of civil society, let me clarify what I mean by civil society here. Literature on liberal understanding on civil society basically position civil society as something apolitical, meaning like they usually stay outside the government, outside the state, or not being involved in politics. So there's a liberal, apolitical, ideal approach of civil society, positioning civil society as a watchdog, right? So you can refer to many literatures, Larry Diamond, Alfred Stefan, many others that argue that how civil society contribute to democracy is because they are being a watchdog. They tell the government, you are, out of line, you need to do this, you need to do that, but not being inside the government or the state or the regime. But there are other kind of critical point of view that a bit different from liberal approach and ideal approach. They are more pragmatic and more realistic by saying that no, it's really difficult if you understand civil society in an ideal or in a watchdog type of roles. There's nothing much civil society can do. So for them, there are quite many books on this, including Kopecky, if you can refer in the Google Scholars, that argue that let's be realistic on how civil society can contribute to the change by being political, basically. This approach basically referred to the experiences from the former USSR or Eastern Europe experiences, which is, I found it quite similar with Indonesia. After the change of Perestroika and Glasnost, while civil society, some of them were activists getting into the politics, and for them, there's a kind of new understanding on which is different from liberal, apolitical, idealistic type of approach. That's how I will discuss this, and I will show you in Indonesia, civil society starting from the liberal approach and go slowly become political, and that's really still not everyone agree on how civil society, approach themselves to be involved in politics. And that's really the reality in life in Indonesia civil society organization. Please, next, please. So this is the 5 presidents that we have so far, from the 1998 until the current one that will end next year, February 14, so Valentine Days for Indonesia will be for election day. So we are ready for that. But I want to show you how this bullet in the top and down below the picture show you how civil society evolve and shift, right? From the 1998 when Habibie replaced Suharto, civil society was behind him, to support behind him in a sense like this is the agenda for democracy. So they are outside the regime, right? Abdurrahman Wahid himself is figures an icon of civil society. He is the very inclusive type of person. He was the one that first acknowledged Chinese New Year in Indonesian calendar to become a public holiday. He loved by the Indonesian Chinese Indonesian because he was really the one that acknowledged them fully, their right as an Indonesian as well as a Chinese descent. So many civil society also support him, only a little bit or one of them that support him in the palace. But he was short-lived, only 2 years, and replaced by Megawati Soekarno Putri, the daughter of Indonesian first president. Civil society also being outside basically and try to play a role as a watchdog. So the blue one are basically roles as a watchdog, and I will show you later the red one where they start to be part of the political arena, including being member of legislative and including become a team of the president later on in Joko Widodo. So 2004, there's been a discussion among the civil society organization worried about reform agenda was hijacked. So we are talking now about the oligarchy roles that hijack the agenda of democracy, but at that time it is already identified among civil society organizations and the thinking of what to do then. So there's a study facilitated by Professor Olle Törnqvist from Sweden, and then also a big project facilitated by Demos, bring together civil society activists and reflect on this. What should we do? How our reform agenda after around 10 years, there's nothing much happening. So let's think about this, seriously. And the idea then is how we protect or how we make sure or guide reform agenda to be at place is, facilitating or asking activists to get into politics. And so after that, so many activists become become politician through the parties. And later on, it's expanded during Joko Widodo. They are become part of the executive as a special, special consultant or giving input to the presidency, but formally, not just informally. So they are having their own office. So this marked the shift from civil society in Indonesia in relation to, shall we go into politics or shall we not go into politics? And 2004 and 2014 is the start of that roles. But at the same time, there are still civil society organizations staying outside and still being critical. So what we have is a plurality of civil society in Indonesia, the way they perceive politics, the way they perceive presidential election, the way they perceive so many policies that support or not support president or the regime. It continues in 2009, when Joko Widodo became our president for the first tenure. To support his legitimacy, he included many civil society activists in his cabinet, as well as he established a new office, presidential office, it's called, and include many of the activists inside the special team to give him input on what to do on agrarian reform, on what to do with the environmental reform, on what to do on so many other issues. So they become really part of the regime. At the same time, still there are many other who are staying outside the regime. This is what I just want to show you how plural the civil society become after some of the activists decided to go what they call it go politics, and then make it more complicated and also become. I'm going to talk about this, mention about the 2024 election, how the president framed this reality of development in Indonesia by, I have my own team as an activist, so it's already part of the act. We are part of the discussion. We don't really marginalize the people. We don't really not taking care of the process and all that. So what I mean to say is that it support his legitimacy. But what left for the civil society is something else, different stories. Next, please. So these are the example of the activists going into parties. This is Eva Sundari from Indonesian Party, Indonesian Democratic Party for Struggle. Now she's in another party. This is Hetifa, who also former lecturer and also working on the topic, NGO activist working on the topic of budget transparency in West Java. This is an advocate, law advocate that has support many of the cases in Indonesia, human rights violation. And the last one, a lady from Golkar Party, also former activist in a respected NGO in Indonesia, just to show you the sense of who are the activists going into become politics and become politician in 2014. Next. So, as I mentioned, 2009, 2014, when Joko Widodo became a president, he was framed as the figures of the people. He is very populist, the way he perceived the people, the way he framed his policy, the way he, even daily, you see he's always having long sleeve being folded to show that he's always working hard like the people in Indonesia. But to support his being close to the people, he recruits so many activists. This is Teten Masduki, now the Ministry of Small Scale Enterprises, a very strong advocate of anti-corruption. He was the director of Indonesian Anti-Corruption Watch, ECW, and then and also very known nationally. He got a very lot of awards, internationally recognized nationally. He just become a symbol of how Joko Widodo regime is very much open, close to the civil society activists. The one in the bottom, Johan Budi, also former KPK. KPK is Indonesian Corruption Eradication Unit, former spokesperson, and he is also recruited as a spokesperson of Joko Widodo at that time. Again, to show two things. Number one, the inclusion of civil society activists in the government, which shows that the government is close to the civil society organization. They are open-minded. They listen to them, and they're also part of the way agenda for the progressive agenda, guiding progressive agenda. That's number one. The push factor. The pull factor is really from the perspective of the NGO. This is very important to understand that donor agency that has been in Indonesia since Reformasi, starting to see that change can only happen if you influence from within by issuing policies. Street demonstration is not that effective. So there's been a combination between from the donor agency push the change from within, for making sure there are legacy, there are regulation that take place, and at the same time the regime also want them to be there. So a lot of combination on how the transformation, the dynamic from outside the government being a watchdog to get inside the system. Next, please. So, but at the same time, although there have been a lot of activists being inside the government, still over the past 10 years, Indonesian democracy is labeled as deteriorating its quality, called by regression, backsliding, illiberal. There are so many names for that. This started with a discussion, I think 10 years ago, by many scholars from Australia that basically identified three things. Number one, how civil liberties is increasingly restrained. Freedom of expression is not there, or not fully not there, but restricted or restrained. People now getting scared to say something in the Twitter. If you are Indonesian observer, you will see how the citizens try to say something, but not really say it. What do we call that? So they play with words. Rather than saying policy or police, they will say the word was twist, isipol. Basically, it's a police. So they play around with the words in Twitter to avoid being attacked or get a topic or get the sanction because of another regulation that I'll explore later, and which shows that civil liberties is restrained. I myself tried in our faculty WhatsApp group. We know somebody or people are part of Joko Widodo supporters, and we're always careful with a self-censorship type of attitude, which really again bring us or reminds us of the new order era. Heightened ideological polarization since 2017, when Jakarta governorship election, it's really where the Islamic, non-Islamic, or secular. We have Basuki Cahayapurnama as a candidate for governor election, but he's Chinese descent, and he get a case of insulting the Islamic values. And ever since it started to heighten this Islam radical versus secular, non-Pancasila of our five fundamentals, our ideology, or thinking about or imagining about the Islamic Caliphate. So that kind of situation of the heightening ideological appreciation. Number three is the use of legal system as instrument to harass and intimidate opponents of the executive government. As I mentioned, with the regulation called information and electronic transaction, that's really quite scary for the Indonesian now to have a freedom of expression. But not just that, but there are other types of regulation that basically try to intimidate the critical voice. So that's the political context in which civil society, our discussion today, is situated. And if you talk about civil liberties, number one, that's really what civil society in Indonesia try to advocate. And what has happened now is really, in danger. Next, please. So if you take statistic or number or the index of democracy, 2023 published by V-Dem Institute indeed shows how Indonesian liberal democracy index is going down, the score, right? The score is going down, and the most severe score that going down is egalitarian component index. Indonesia is number 1 to 9 globally. The best one is deliberative component, 41. And if you see the electoral democracy index, we are number 74, which shows that Indonesia is doing good in election. At least we don't have a case like in the Philippines case, where a lot of violence happened during the election. We still have a smooth process. We don't have much a problem. Of course, there are problems, but not significant. So Indonesia is considered a stable electoral democracy, right? But again, if we go, that really matters for civil society is this liberal component index and egalitarian component index. This is where the egalitarian or the freedom of expression are here, the component which confirmed by this index that issued by the V-Dem Institute. What's interesting is this participatory component, which is quite high in terms of number, the ranking, showing that indeed we have what's so-called participatory mechanism, institutionalized of participatory mechanism. During the process of development planning from the lowest level of village, sub-district, district, provincial, until national, we have regulation that facilitate people participation. But again, that's really formalistic. Women are not there to discuss, and all the forum of the participatory process is always been government telling the citizen what to do, rather than this kind of elaboration of this kind of discussion. So this is confirmed, the regression quality of Indonesian democracy confirmed by this result of the survey. Please, next. So what exactly happened in terms of regression, democracy regression? There are penal code issued very recent, and basically they are betraying principle of human rights. For number one is an article number 2, recognizing all living law that predominantly anti-democratic, which is basically exclusion for minority rights. Number 2 is criminalizing citizens of making false and news or hoax. This is, I'm going to talk about in one slide on this. The third is criminalize extramarital sex, which is very an issue for young people, younger generation living in the urban area. Number 4 is criminalizing public demonstration without permit. So this demonstration is no longer allowed if there is no permit. This is including, this also happened in the campus. Campus also now become, including my campus, my students complain to me that, sometimes the without permit is not allowed to exercise street demonstration in the campus, which is really strange for me, because campus supposed to be, what do you call that, academic freedom is become also restrained. And then a lot of activities from the campus getting so scared of the students doing the street demonstrations. That's why in 2019 street demonstration in Indonesia, including in Jogja, they go outside the campus, but they have permit to the police to do that demonstration. Number 5 is criminalizing distribution of teaching material that betray values of Pancasila. And the last but not least, the most controversial of criminalized defamation of presidents. So if you say something about President Joko Widodo has a nose like Pinocchio, you will get something in return, which is basically you are dishonor our president. And I'm not sure, I think this has also happened in many other countries in Southeast Asia. Next, please. So this is an example. During the pandemic, people are so stressed with the slowness of the government of responding the situations. At that time, student activists held this mural competition. The mural competitions in many places in Indonesia, including in Jogja, where I live. On one of the murals found in Banten, next to Jakarta province, having Joko Widodo pictures, but sometimes when you get into the internet not working, you see this sign of 404 not found, something like being critical to Joko Widodo, right? 2 days after this, all of this mural being erased by the police, basically saying you are the mural defame the president honor. And until now, as far as I know, it's really difficult to find who do this. So it's just clean. They just clean it. But after that, the public cry, basically saying that this is an example of how freedom of expression is really restrained in Indonesian politics, as an example of how democracy regress in the countries. Statistically speaking, this is the number of citizens being sued by using information and technology transaction bill from 2013 until 2021. So you see that this is where Joko Widodo start become a president. And one case which is very high, 2016, and it goes up, down and up again, 2020. This is where the street demonstration by the students was exercised, and where there are many citizens being sued by the posting that they share on social media. I want to explore this a bit. Another data shows that those who sued the government, those who sued this and label it as a hoax or false news are government, public sectors, the two most parties that sued the citizen of distributing hoax or fake news about the government or about the public sector or about the mining company or about so many private sector activities, saying that the data shows that those who are being insecure about this freedom of expression are government and private sector. That's the data shown, other data studied by the SafeNet, the a community or the NGO working on the freedom of expression in Indonesia, and try to maintain this, advocate this Undang-Undang ITE or Information Technology Transaction. Next, please. So again, what can we tell from the last 10 years, right? I would say that it's a mix of things, mixtures. The one in the below the number of year, it shows that what the government has done, and the one on the top is what the government has done as well, but happy, the civil society happy about it, right? This is, for example, bill on disability. Civil society has been really happy that it's become a bill because it shows how Indonesian government become very inclusive. There is also an agrarian reform in 2008, law anti-sexual violence in 2021, president regulation 2002, basically a task force that deal with human rights violation in the past. And last but not least, we have been in public, we are basically refused three times terms of presidency that Joko Widodo tried to push at the end of last year or mid last year. So this is a public civil society achievement in a way, because that's really like very active refuse or debate on it, and then the president, okay, we do other way, which is promoting his son, something I will explore later. But on the other hand, there's also lots of things that hurt human rights principle. Labor movement really upset about the regulation in 2015 on limiting process of deciding standard minimum of wage. Usually the way it is decided involving three parties through a three-party forum. Number one is the representative from the union, labor union. Number two is the private sector themselves. And it is mediated by the government office of manpower, right? But that's no longer there. Wage is decided by two things. First is the inflation. Second is the economic growth. So there is no discussion at the local level involving labor union. No. So it automatically will be decided by national government. This is what hurt labor union so much. And then the very reason they then decided to establish a party. Law on information electronic transaction, as I mentioned, basically hurting the freedom of expression, basic human rights. HTI is Hizbut Tahrir Indonesia, Islamic organisation masyarakat, which has been banned without court decisions. So the government just banned it. The most important event during the pandemic, particularly 2019 before and 2020, when students went to the street protesting so many issues. But the most important one is on job creation law, Undang-Undang Cipta Kerja, and on the corruption and eradication committee revision bill revision. So it's really like a lot of things going on, but that's what brings students to the street to demonstrate, to protest, the largest after Reformasi, right? In my own city, 5,000 people, and there's a series of it. 5,000 students joining the demonstration in Gejayan. They call it Gejayan Calling, and then the next 2 weeks, and they have a whole series of Gejayan street protests in Yogyakarta. Jakarta, I think only once, but around 50 students killed all over the places where this demonstration was on. And the last but not least, that regulation that hurts civil society is how National Election Commissions rules out women candidacy in terms of counting. So counting the result of the votes. Like, for instance, if I only have 5,200 and what I need is 6,000, so the regulations say you don't get the seat unless you get 5,700. So higher than 5,000 to make it like one seat. So that's really the problem now. But I think the last or the recent news that a lot of protests now, they already can give up and return to the old system where if you get 2.1 vote, you get one seat. If not, like making it only one seat because of you need to get a 2-3. So this is the whole mixed pictures that make it really difficult to say something like, does civil society support democracy or support Joko Widodo or not? It's really complicated because these pictures can also be relate to what my earlier slide on how in each government, from being outside the regime to be inside the regime. So this is actually a mixture of, in one way, these are the result of many activists being inside the regime, right? Pushing agrarian reform, pushing disability groups, pushing anti-sexual violence law. This is a part of the way being in the government, right? But at the same time, the regime also has their own agenda, the one in the bottom, that they can just go whatever with their own agenda, with their own target. So the situation is really ambiguous. In one hand, you are basically support many issues that civil society activists support, and they have people there. But on the other hand, the regime continue with whatever they want to in relation to economic growth, including the facilitating environment that is easy for the investor. So then it's make it really hard to if somebody asks me, so does Joko Widodo really that bad and not really having anything left for the civil society agenda? I will say no, because if you see there are quite significant regulation that anti-sexual violence, for instance. In campus now, we have like standard operation procedures. What happen if something happened with sexual harassment among the students or between students and lecture? We have certain standard, and that's really important, and that's really significant, and that's a progress compared to the previous era. But at the same times, it's a really mixed picture of. At the same time, the government just go with their own way to minimize the activities of labor union, for instance. So it's really a mixed picture that, as a result, related to my previous PowerPoint, within the regime and outside the regime, this is what we got after 25 years, and particularly during the last 10 years of Joko Widodo presidency. Next, please. How do I do with time? Okay. So, as I mentioned, they pretend to fight in 2014, but they become friends later on. Prabowo become a Ministry of Defense. So maybe there's no battle. Battle is only for the D-Day of the election, Jokowi lovers and Jokowi haters. But at the end, they got together again to show that to promote the agenda that I identified in the previous slide. And then voters, I think, learned a lot since 2013, 2019. Doesn't matter. They are the one who deal, and we just need to don't fight because of them, something like that in the public, not to, and also among the civil society organization, we are really careful and really critical, and they already think that in 2019, for instance, they are basically the same. But of course, nobody believe civil society activists when they say that because of the Jokowi lovers and fall in love with Jokowi and all that. Next, please. So, new developmentalism as a context of economic. He was Asian of the Year 2019. There's also a book that shows Men of Contradictions, which I also confirmed during in the previous slide on how so many things mixed. But we have to agree that he builds and exercise physical development seriously. He takes that seriously. 1,700 kilometer toll roads, 2.1 times the length of the previous era, which shows that he works really hard to achieve the target. But at the same time, new developmentalism, as argued by Yves Warburton, see another side of it on how economic is very important, infrastructure is very important, on the compensate of freedom of expression. Next, please. The other one, next one, please. I forgot which one. Okay, the previous one. So let me just explore this new developmentalism. Basically, I already mentioned before, populist mobilization as a strategy of mobilizations, executive expansion of authoritarian toolkit for suppressing oppositions. This is a double. It has curtailing criticism, deterioration of civil liberties, pragmatic regime with no deep education to norms and institution of liberal democracy. That's basically new developmentalism which remind us again during Suharto era. I think that's to the next slide. Next. Yeah. Do we go for economic achievement or we go for democracy? Is democracy first? Is economic first and democracy later? I was born during the time where Suharto was really in power, and so we still remember this ideology of economic first, politics or democracy later. You see that Indonesia, compared to Southeast Asian countries, the achievement is indeed significant. Again, it shows that the president and the cabinet works really hard, right? And we have minus 2.1 in 2020, slowly increased to 3.7, and then we have this year 5.2% of economic growth. And compared to other countries in Southeast Asia, of course, Philippines is quite doing well, 6.3, as well as Cambodia. But apart from that, I just want to show you that the economic side of development works really well. But I will argue that this is referring to the new developmentalism, this is on the compensate of political rights. As again, to the previous slide that I shows, the undang-undang or regulation on bill on information and electronic transactions is an indicator of how citizen being shot basically in the context of their civil rights. Next, please. But this is perhaps my last two slides. Civil society in Indonesia is very plural, right? And then one of the studies shows that they are basically in big cities, Jakarta, Jogja, Semarang, Makassar here, and somewhere in Sumatra, dominated by the middle class, no grassroots connection, very plural, and no ideological roots. So what the figures I mentioned earlier is basically are the activists having these sociological features. They are big, they are educated, living in the big cities, and they don't have any grassroots connection. So this is the general pictures of Indonesian civil society organization, or CSO. Before I talk about the activist civil society organization, the representation of CSO. Next, please. And they have a lot, around more than 344,000. This is a database 2017, perhaps out of date, but I just want to give you a sense how big the civil society organization is in terms of number nationally. Next. While they are big, they're also, I mentioned earlier, they have all increased the internal capacity of civil society. Their internal capacity is increased. So this is the survey made by civil society themselves about the capacity. So 3.7, the lower the score, the better. And you see that it's been up and down, right? But 2019 is the lowest score, but then it slowly increased. And the last one is 3.7, which shows quite a significant capacities according to their indicator. At the same time, the one book that I edit with Professor Anders Ullin and Astrid Noren Nielsen from University of Lund, showing that there's been what's so-called elitizations of civil society activists in the Indonesian civil society organization. Is it good or bad? We don't go to that kind of answer, but in relation to the capacity, it's a mix. One, capacity institutionally, it is getting bigger and it is getting sustained for long term, but internally also it's been a lot of domination from the old type of elite civil society, dominating the landscape of civil society organization in Indonesia, marginalizing the young people. Next, please. So demographics, young people. Next year, 2024 election, there will be around 55% of young people as voters. Gen Z, millennial are those who dominate the voters. So what about them? Do they also involve in civil society organization? Do they involve being an activist, or how are they doing? I think they focus on the different issues, right? I think also you are here as a young people. You have different priority. Mental health issue is the one that is most that the thing considered important for the young people. Job insecurity due to neoliberal labor market, and sexual harassment I mentioned earlier in the other previous slide. The strategy is also different. They don't really think like sustainability, but they are very much ad hoc, community-based, and a very short-term orientation in terms of seeing things. So it's not sustained. And these are the generation, so-called the Reformasi children, basically having such a distance from the human rights violation in the past, make it really difficult for them to imagine what happened if you cannot access any book. What happened if you cannot access the book that you like most, but contain ideology that is forbidden by the countries, right? I had experienced that, have to, finding my own way to get the book. So this is the situation among the young people. They are strategic, but they have different orientation and they have different way of looking on how things goes, including in the role in the field of civil society. Next, please. So what then? To conclude, I agree with Ken Setiawan that argue that in this vulnerable democracy, but they keep going, they keep struggling, they keep doing things what they can, right? And in the next 2024 election, we have new party, so-called Labour Party. These are the party that get impact so bad due to the job creation law. Their role is minimized. They have no say on the standard of labor wage. Then they are basically within opposition if they can get through the parliamentary threshold, which is 4%. They are aware that they are not just talk about wage, so they are in alliance with other coalition grassroots, including peasant movement, urban poor movement, and informal workers to expand the base. Basically, we still need to see what happened. Will they pass this parliamentary threshold or not? If they not, I think in the local level where labor population quite strong, they will make it, I think. So it's a kind of a process, and we just need to wait until 2029, 2034, how they are doing in politics. But I think it is a lot of promising there. It's vulnerable, but it's resilient. They keep going, they keep starting, they keep trying whatever they can to promote civil society interests, to be in the marginal groups, to be a voice for those who are not part of the regime. Next, please. So another way of struggling is this is the urban poor community, right? Become candidate for legislative election 2024. They have no money, they have nothing, but they have already a history before with Anies Baswedan, Jakarta former governor. And the Jakarta former governor, Anies, protect or revive their housing settlement after being evicted by previous governor. They keep fighting, basically. They know their limitation, but they want to show to the other public, to the other grassroots, let's do this. Let's do it together. We don't do it partially. We do it as an organizations, and they do a lot of microfunding mobilizations. Try to do. I'm personally a bit not sure, but I think in Jakarta they will get one. But through Partai Buruh or Labour Party as an opposition party that they're aligned with. Just want to show you the last two slides on how it is vulnerable, but it's also resilient on how civil society organization in Indonesia in the context of Indonesian democracy. Next, please. So what happened then? So these are the very recent last week when our president promote his first son Gibran to be vice president candidate, but that remind us, the public, are we going to Philippine direction in terms of family dynastic, basically, right? Within the context of economic pragmatism, within the context that people do whatever, I just want to do my life, right? And more importantly, in the context of my presentation, is the context of whether is it change from within or change from outside, or do civil society having more challenge to promote principle of democracy, or is it a momentum to find a common ground, just like what we have during New Order and during Reformasi? So I stop there. Thank you so much for bear with me.
Thank you very much for that extremely comprehensive talk. We do have time remaining for questions. Do we have anybody in the audience who'd like to start out? So I'll sort of abuse my privileges as chair to ask the first question while people are gathering their thoughts. So I'm curious, you present this interesting picture of as you say, the mixed picture of civil society succeeding in parts of its agenda through collaboration, co-optation, whatever you want to call it, with the government. On the other hand, obvious measures, particularly regarding human rights, censorship, and so on, that are something that hurts civil society, adverse to the democratic resilience and quality of the country. So given that sort of mixed picture and surely civil society's mixed feelings about the government, how can we sort of assess their role in opposing what, you know, is being called autocratization or backsliding and so on? Is civil society really pushing back on balance against this change and transformation, subtle though it may be? Sometimes, at least, sometimes it's less subtle. Or is it, you know, reluctantly kind of going along with it because its agenda is partially anyway being fulfilled?
Can I respond directly? Okay. Yes, thank you for the questions, Mark. I think if you are talking about civil society activist organizations staying outside the regime, they keep pushing back, basically. But usually the response that makes public a bit confused is usually the response are from their also colleague who are saying that they're saying differently. But for the case of freedom of expression, I think it's quite strong. Criminalizations of activists is really there, and there's no doubt about it, and there's no response that can justify it. So that on specific issues that is very clear, the pushing back process are there. And what I know, as far as I know, there's been a lot of networking in small cities that including Yogyakarta, and there's Surabaya and other cities outside Jakarta that try to consolidate this for the 2024 elections. My feeling is that there will be more and more people, what we call golput, no choice. What do you call it? You go to the ballot box, but you just choose everything and disqualified the fourth seat. So that will be my feeling of 2024, an expression of upsetness, particularly on the last week decisions by the president to promote his own son. I forgot to mention here that there is a viral of the video, young people in front of his youngest son, big billboard in Jakarta, and this young woman, very young, I think it's Gen Z or millennial, I think it's Gen Z, saying that I'm fed up, and it become really circulated on Twitter, an expression of young people are no longer or being skeptical in 2024 election. I hope I answer your questions.
Hi, Captain. I have some questions. I have two unrelated questions. The first is about the capacity of civil society to an electoral campaign. I ask this because last year, Philippine civil society really tried to mount a huge electoral campaign to prevent the current president winning, but still won nonetheless. But you mentioned like a lot of internal capacity are strong in the civil society. So could you tell us more about whether there are all groups already consolidated try and match to win the election? And then my second question, and this is more on the university level. You said that Indonesia included in its penal code a prohibition of discussions on materials such as Marxism. I was wondering how that impacts, say, on social science education, like in psychology, Marx is considered one of the founding individuals. So does that have an effect on what will be discussed? How is it now discussed now? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ivan, for the questions, for the two questions. What I mean by internal capacity is organizationally speaking. So they are good in having report. They are good in financial transparency. They are good in doing campaign. They are good in so many organizational aspects. That's what I mean by increase. Because before, a lot of a discussion among civil society in Indonesia, they are not transparent. So there are money allocated, but there is no clear process of reporting it. But it's changed now. Things are getting more professionalized, specifically on the internal organizational capacity. It's also good for sustainability, right? So if you already know how to campaign, how to outreach public, how to communicate with your audience, or how to do a policy brief, this technocratic point of aspect of organizations, then you are basically labeled as you have a strong potential to be sustainable as an organization. So that's nothing to do with the campaign, with the 2024 election. Number two, that's an interesting question. I think in campus is still safe. Maybe Sari can also say something from the UGM point of view. She's also my colleague at the UGM. I don't have any problem of teaching anything in campus. I think campus still can maintain to some degree this intellectual exercise, freedom of thinking. We still have Pancasila, of course, the 5 fundament class, and it's obligatory classes. Students cannot pass without taking that course. So it's still there, but there are still some space in campus on how to teach material such as including Marxism. We have a lot of good discussion group that, very, very critical on our own ideology, but so far so good. So let's hope to be the same in the next years to come. Thank you.
Maybe I get the microphone.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lina, for the excellent talk. I also meant to ask something about capacity, but you just answered that. Just like 2 minor things. First, you were talking about how this new party, the Partai Buruh, and how you think maybe it might have some kind of potential. I was wondering how that intersects with the kind of electoral politics that we're seeing now. We have these 3 tickets, 3 polls, 3 camps vying for elections next year. And I wonder if there is any positioning or any participation of this newly formed party. Are they supporting any of these 3 tickets? Are they participating into the competition? So that's one thing. The second question is, so you concluded with these slides about Jokowi's children, and so recently we've had this controversial decision by the Constitutional Court that has lowered the threshold, the age threshold for candidates to the presidency and vice president, so that Jokowi's basically son could run. And interestingly, one of the key decision makers was a relative of Jokowi's son himself. So a very controversial thing. I was wondering how has civil society reacted to that, especially those groups, those organizations that were especially close to Jokowi's and who have got benefit from, as you described, from being in such an influential position.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Oh, sorry. Number one, it's still, I think they're on discussion, because the 3, the candidate from PDIP, Ganjar Pranowo and Mahfud, was part of the party that support bill on job creation law, something that the labor union and labor community is out of the questions. They will cross that name. Prabowo used to be one of the favorite, but no longer there. I happen to be in Bekasi, one of the area where concentration of a labor movement was very strong. Anies perhaps one of the option, because he is the one not involved in job creation law process. So that for them, it's really job creation law. Parties that support job creation law will be out of the options, right? But we still need to see, because internally it's very fragmented too. One of the figures from the labor union already, flirting with Ganjar Pranowo although officially the Partai Buruh, the Labour Party, has not yet decided who are they going to support for the presidential candidate. So last time I was in Bekasi, tried to check a small survey on what are their preference. They go with Anies, simply because he's not part of the parties or figures that support this job creation law. Other than that, it's not really, they used to be like Prabowo so much, but because of the Prabowo so part of the one that support it, they don't really think he's a good option. That's my first comment on your first questions. The second question is very interesting, Diego, because officially they look still good in public, but I know for sure that most of the civil society activists support in the government support Ganjar. So it seems like they also play politics right now because it's still another year to go, right? They still need to have a good relationship with the president and the team who support him and his son. But at the same time, they need to also support the candidate they in line with. I'm talking about the Gajah Mada University alumni, Kagama. That's really strong in the cabinet and is strong in the civil society. Well, the support that the President Joko Widodo. But other than that, it's still hard to tell, I guess. I am just talking what I know is the Gajah Mada University alumni that is very much before support Jokowi, and then now still wait and see, I think. So it's really interesting. But again, for those who are outside the government, the regime, I think most of them will either Anies or golput or not elected during the election. That will be my take.
Question from one of our participants in Zoom, Yufeidu. So thanks for the amazing talk. How do you think Jokowi will exercise his immense popular power after the end of his presidency, given that 2 of the 3 pairs of presidential candidates depend on his implicit support to run and even to govern? Do you think Jokowi will assume any formal roles like the party matriarch Megawati, or even like Singapore's Lee Kuan Yew after their presidential or prime ministerial term officially ended? Half jokingly, I told friends that I think he would be well suited to be the mayor of Nusantara. Do you see any chance for that as a possibility?
I don't think mayor of Nusantara will be an option. He's lowering himself as a president. Thank you for the questions. I think he's really fighting the largest or the dominant party, the PDIP, the Indonesian Democratic Party for Struggle. And that's really something because that's really, I think he's really brave to fight this party. But what will then be his role is still difficult to predict because in one way, I have an inclination to say he controlled the resources, right? The resources as a president, even though the last 1 year before he handed the position into the new president, the resource is in his hand. So the power of incumbency is really strong, right? And he can do whatever he wants. But at the same time, there is a limitation from the ruling party too, from PDI Perjuangan, that will not be that easy compared to when he was about to start his second term. So my guess about this is, what I can say is like there are a lot of limitations for him to move around, even though he control the resources as a president until October 2024. In relation to civil society, again, it's been like I think many of Indonesian, critical Indonesian, progressive Indonesian kind of make a jokes of those who just realize, oh, this is what happened with Jokowi now. Oh, okay, I just realized what happened? What did you do 10 years? That's the question that they ask. What have you been on the past 10 years? Because we already know since the previous term. But I think, again, for civil society, it's also a momentum for having this common enemy, so to speak, to really, hopefully, to get a new platform on promoting bigger issues. I think that's my comment.
I'm not an expert in politics. I don't do research on this. I'm just a casual observer. Hello, Ibu. I'm just wondering, what's your reading about why Jokowi had a sudden change in his approach to his governance in the past how many months, as we've seen in the recent saga. Was something triggering that? Because he was sort of seen as a post-Reformasi sort of leaders who are trying to, make Indonesia a cleaner, a more competent government. But it seems that there's this sudden change in the last, I don't know, how many months before his terms end. And secondly, I don't know whether that has anything to do with how complex corruption issue is in Indonesia, which has been so much institutionalized, in which even when you talk about all these bills, these are all gone through the parliament. And we know who are they? Who are those people who are involved in passing the laws? A lot of these are related to the political parties who are. So it's not just the executive, but the legislative. So, and also the judicial system that my friend just mentioned. I mean, the extent of the corruption that's gone literally to almost every key organs of the states. So I'm just wondering what else? I mean, apart from just talking about civil society, I mean, how can Indonesia be governed better? For example, could the Singapore model be seen as an inspiration in which there's only a few dominant parties? Look at Indonesia right now, have so many parties, and people can jump around across parties near the election period. So is that kind of triggering or muddle up the issues of corruption and other things? So that's just some of my questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I think last year or 2 years ago, TII published ranking of index of democracy globally, and Indonesia going down, and that's really upset the president. And the regime tried to do so many things because that's really a bad perception for also foreign investment to Indonesia, right? But the thing is, he's also the one who support the revision bill on Indonesian corruption eradication institutions. So, I mean, I don't think he should surprise because that's also what he got from supporting this KPK law. KPK is the Indonesian Corruption Eradication institutions. But at the same time, it's also there's a feeling that it is a very much in one hand you want to have this investment and economic development and to have legitimacy from the populations. On the other hand, Indonesia has so many laws that kind of stumble the investment process. So the solution was that this job creation law that streamlining investment process, issue, what do you call it, permit for investment, right? And all of the permit process are now centralized to the national government. No longer local government can have that leeway process where corruption starts. So job creation law is aimed to cut all the process that breed the corruption at the local level. Particularly, we still need to see whether it also works at the national level to centralize the whole process. That's in relation to corruption. In relation to a president trying to fight the dominant party, in one way, all of us feel so upset. Well, not all of us, citizens feel really dominant party does not much represent the voices of the people. Basically, I think everywhere in the world, the party not function well. Party roles as a representation institution, representative institution, to socializing problem. All of the textbook that we learn in textbook on the role of party we cannot find it in Indonesia. So, and also in public, Megawati, the chair of our dominant party, PDIP, sometimes position him in disrespectfully, which I think also the reason why he want to prove himself that I can do what I want as a president. Something like a competition between individual personal style of leadership and institutional base, which is party-based politics. So we see this a kind of fighting, a competition between whether individual can take control or institution. I mean, if we learn from the textbook, representative democracy cannot work without parties, right? Cannot work without the representative or representation institution, because it's just impossible to do, to listen to everybody. You just need to have some people talk on your behalf. But again, not the typical Indonesian case, but representation politics is really difficult to making sure that everybody are happy with what you want. But that what I think also in my reflection, including in Southeast Asia region, including the Philippines and Thailand, this kind of tension between whether you want to go or you want to establish stronger institution, party, democratic system, or people get frustrated to this, and after trying more than 25 years, and they go to more individual, personalized politics again. And that's what I see, my reflection looking at what he has done last month on promoting his own son, including getting support from his brother-in-law in court, what do you call it? Mahkamah Agung. Yeah, court institutions. So that's really, for me, a reflection on a not typical Indonesian case. We can also find it in regional, but how this tug and war between whether you want to institutionalize what you have, or democratic principle, or you want to go solo. I don't know whether I answered that question, your question, but that's my thought on it.
Thank you, Professor, for your presentation. I guess I'll just have quite a short question regarding your mention of activists that become politicians in Indonesia. So I'm curious as to know the role or effectiveness of the legislature in promoting horizontal checks on the government, and whether in Indonesia they provide that sort of role. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. I think they're doing well in terms of supporting many of initiative on bill or institutionalized human rights principle, protecting minority, including disability, sexual violence. They're doing well. But if we can reflect, why other issues such as job creation law or resource coal mining regulation, why it cannot end, why it didn't have any effect to the more progressive point, more progressive view or more progressive road? Why? My thought or my reflection on this is that for issues that hurt the oligarchy or investment or politicians investor point of view, they will say no. But for issues that didn't hurt them, they will let it go. Okay, it's a disability. Give it to the. It's fine to give. Oh, this is for anti-sexual violence. It's okay. But come into political economy topic, mining, investment, relate with labor, they will say basically no. So there's a selection of issues that makes my previous slide as a mixture, because they select what in line with the interests of the regime, which then also can represent Indonesia becoming to have a face on human rights side, including protection of minority. So that will be my take on it. And activists in the parliament, in the party, do well for that, right? Well, we see this connection or collaboration between activists outside when they facilitate or when they collaborate or they promote or they advocate issues on sexual harassment, sexual violence, right? So they really collaborate there. But again, if we can reflect why certain issue can easily get in, why other issue cannot get in, what's the reason? So I think the answer can be, in my view, is as far as doesn't really touch the economic side of the regime, the business side of the regime, the political oligarchy type of sectors, it's a safe issues to support. So again, to respond to your question, what the activists for that particular issues is really doing well. But another thing make it really difficult is also institutional problem. So once you are being a party and you get elected by the election, but in the election, you are basically in the parliament itself. There are faction, there are commission, there are all of that, and make it really difficult to really straightforward on your agenda. I think it's really the problem of institutionalizing the legislative process in the parliament. Make it what you are basically, your aspiration can get lost somehow in the process due to the so many layers of negotiation, so many layers of institution, commission, faction, special force, or whatever, it just gets lost basically. And again, that's not typical Indonesian problem, but typical representation problem. I hope I answered your question.
Other questions? If not, then all that remains is to thank you once more for a very interesting talk, very interesting discussion. Thank you all for coming. And again, please keep an eye on our website for our events coming up in SEMB. And I wish you all a good rest of the semester. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.